chat, or how does that, is there any
No,
visibility on our part on that? I've not been part of that.
no. So what'll happen is any questions that come in from YouTube, I will send directly and he will ask them.
Right. Okay. So we don't have any visibility of the chats coming in on the live session. Those will be directed to Bruce. Got it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Energy OutWest Technical Peer Exchange live session. My name is Bruce Hagan, and I'm the Weatherization Program Manager for North Dakota, and I serve on the board of Energy OutWest. Our panelists today includes a mix of training centers, state staff, and sub-grantee staff. They are Amanda Hatherley from New Mexico, Chris Clay from Washington, Jonathan Ballou from Montana, Vinny Pedalino from Arizona, Troy Cuchera from New Mexico, Michael Figueroa from Oregon, Mimi Burbage from Alaska, Dan Barabee from Alaska, and Cal Steiner from North Dakota. We've identified some subjects to discuss, and we'll treat this like a regular in-person Energy Out West technical peer exchange. I'll be monitoring the questions coming in through the chat feature and relaying them to the panel as we discuss each subject. Near the end of the session, a link to submit a request for BPI credits for watching the session will be posted in the chat on the right side of the screen. All right, let's get to that first subject. Amanda Hatherley is going to start us out talking about training and online certifications.
Okay, hi everybody. I know that all of you managed to get on this YouTube call, which means that you've managed to tackle some of the challenges that we've all had to deal with technology in the last few months. And basically, if you can handle things like Zoom calls and YouTube chats, then you're pretty well set up for online classes. A lot of the time, the biggest hurdle I think people have with going to online classes and remote learning is just the technology itself. And so I just want to commend you all for getting this far. And I'm sure some of you have been taking online classes, finding them challenging maybe. One of the great benefits that I think a lot of people might have found is that you don't have to get into fancy clothes. You can stay in your pajamas. You can have a cup of coffee when you want. You just stop and get your coffee, or you can, you don't have to get on planes and travel. So even though you lose some of the benefit of an in-person class, there are lots of benefits to online learning. And I guess, are there questions in the chat, Bruce? How does this work? Because I know most of the training centers have been moving to online classes in the last few months. We've been doing either totally online, where it's what is called asynchronous, which means you log in any time of the night and day and do your class. We've also been doing what's called synchronous, which is where it's like this, a Zoom call where or a YouTube where you can actually see and interact with people. And then there's been a lot of mix of those two types.
So Amanda, I'll kick in here for a second because I am like the least technically competent person on a computer. Well, maybe not anymore. I'm a lot better now than I was because of using Zoom. But next week, there's at least, I think 8 of us or 7 of us that are taking our QCI training and recertification online in Alaska, because we have had the Building Performance Center from Bellingham, Chris Clay's group, come up and do that for us, because we have a small group of QCI people, and to fly them all out, it was going against travel policies that the state of Alaska had. So we used to bring them up. Now we have to do it online. It's a little nerve-wracking to think about doing a QCI, an energy auditor test online, but field test. But it'll be interesting. And I mean, the technology has come a long way, because we were at a point where we had to recertify. And I didn't want to just keep putting it off until we could go back somewhere in person to do that.
Yeah, and I think the recertification process for people is actually very straightforward now. And I think most of the training centers are doing that. We do it through, like it's a live conversation on Zoom. You obviously, if you're recertifying, you don't have to go like actually do a CAS test, because presumably you've had a certification for 3 years, you've been doing the work for years, and we're assuming that you have a level of comfort with that. And so it's more like a conversation that people have, or the training
Right.
that people have with the candidate. And it's been going really well. I think we've done quite a lot of them in the last month, and it's been fine.
Well, it's nerve-wracking from my point of view, but I think it'll probably work out fine. But we put a lot of our trust into Chris Clay, and he'll be training us for a couple of days beforehand. But it definitely is a different experience to have everything be on Zoom.
Yeah, no, Chris will do great. Huh, Chris?
Yeah.
That next week, but we've done a few of these already, and that's how we've been doing those recertifications. And I wish you didn't feel like it was so nerve-wracking, because you already have your QCI, Mimi, you know,
I know.
and everyone who has their QCI already, they've already proven themselves. They're doing the work all the time, but BPI tests are always somewhat nerve-wracking for people, because it's, you know,
Right.
no, who wants to take a test? Everyone raise their hand, you know.
Yeah.
Dan wants to.
Well, good. He's going to be with me. So.
Oh, and we're working. We were just working today on. We'll probably be able to do like in-person exams at our training center pretty soon, but because what we're working on is how to do sort of a we'll be Zooming inside the building, I guess, and have people in the training house doing their thing. So they'll be in a, but we'll be Zooming. The proctor won't be in the same room with people. So
Well, yeah,
we're
because the training
working
house
on that
members-
now.
Mhm.
Do you want to address the what we talked about the other day, which, you know, the recertifications can be done online, but some of the new certifications can't be?
Yeah. So you can't do the energy auditor as a new certification online. You can't do the field. You can take a written exam. You just can't do a field remotely. But you can do the building analyst remotely. There's protocols for that, and you can do any of the written exams remotely, and you can recertify remotely with a field exam. And for those of you who are wondering, like, how does that work? I know how a lot of the training centers are doing it is we have a color PDF that has got lots of photos on it. So it's got pictures of thermostats and light switches and, you know, combustion equipment, different types of combustion equipment, gas ovens, stoves. And as you go through the field exam, you reference that color PDF, just as you would as if you were walking around the house. And so that's how it works. And we send out the PDF, or I think most people do ahead of time. So you have a chance to become familiar with it.
Okay, anybody have anything else to add to that? I'm not seeing any questions coming in, so.
I want to pose a question to Amanda and to Chris Clay as training centers. This is Michael from Oregon. What would you say to a training center that was maybe struggling to move online? Like, what are some of the biggest challenges, and what have training centers done to kind of push forward into online platforms? And how do you get over some of the big hurdles here? Yeah, just kind of curious from my perspective as the state.
I want to go first because Amanda has no problems with that. They were one of the first training centers to get all their stuff online and do a lot of their training online, and then have field training also. And we were mostly stuck in the dark ages where we did mostly all hands-on training. So we had to make that push to go to online. And the Zoom platform is the big deal there, but then we've also had to get up and running with a learning management system, and that is its own challenge right there. And Amanda, you've probably had a learning management system for years, but we just got started.
Yeah, and I'll say too that what happened was about 9 or 10 years ago, we had a grant to create an online course or some online courses, and we did such a terrible job of it. We had no idea what we were doing. It was just a horrible experience all around because at our end, we messed it up so badly. And that was sort of the challenge to, okay, how do you do this? So over the following 8 years, we just slowly, learned all the best practices and everything about how to create good online courses. But I would say, reach out to me or other, training organizations that have online courses, and we can definitely help you and give best practices and, whatever questions we can help answer.
Yeah, this week we did we did a combustion class and a blower door class, and I found one of the weak links that we have is that people wanted to see me. We have the training houses there, and so I don't see why so I took my computer out to the training house and showed them how, the parts and pieces of the furnace, but that's not, I need to make that next jump where I have a camera and I go, all right, here you go, here, and I can point. You don't want to point the computer at the, but that's what we did. And people, gave us, evaluation says, oh, that was a lot better than some of the other online trainings we had where it's just PowerPoint, because we have the facility, we can show them, we can do things. We measured fan flow, we did a spillage test, we did combustion analysis, and we did the best we could. But when you're doing it by yourself, so you're socially distanced, it's a little challenging holding your computer and kind of going, check that out, So that's our next leap, because we have the training houses, we got a wall of furnaces. I think it can work pretty well. We have a little mobile home we could actually blow the belly and install a fan and stuff in. So we could make it even more interesting and actually do things rather than just sit there talking PowerPoint, One more challenge, Michael, is the technology. Often when you try to do a Zoom meeting with people, they don't have the technology. And we've talked about this before, Amanda too, is like, not everyone has a phone they can put put a Zoom meeting on. And so we end up doing we did a mobile home training 2 weeks ago where everyone was in a conference room, 15 people in a conference room. Well, we sent them iPads so that they could access the learning management system, but it's very hard to do online training when there's just one camera to the room. You can't, right now we can see each other and talk, and that helps in getting communication to happen. But online training, if you can't talk and address people one-on-one, it's very difficult to have I'd say a worthwhile training. So technology, it has its limitations because you have to check and make sure that they have the technology, that they have their own access point to get on the meeting,
Okay, we've had a few questions come in from the chat now. So the first one, I have one auditor who's passed the auditor field test but failed the written test. Is there an online written test for the energy auditor he can take?
Yeah, you can do it. You can do it via Zoom.
Okay. If an auditor had a QCI previously but expired due to COVID, are they eligible to take a remote field test?
See when they expired, because BPI gave an extension for those exams, which I think might end at the end of August or September. But if it was because of COVID, they should be able to be in the extension.
Yeah, actually, they just extended that to October 31st.
You have to have a current QCI.
Right.
Yeah.
It has to be in place. You never want to lose it. Otherwise, you're going to end up taking 3 tests.
Mm-hmm. Okay. How would healthy home certification be done at this time?
It can be done online. It's
Okay.
just a written exam. We've done several of those.
Okay. Well, that's all I'm seeing in the chat for now. So why don't we move on to the next subject, which is going to be blower door procedures during COVID-19. And I'm going to have Chris start us out on that.
All right. Well, I participated with a group of folks on the Building Performance Association. We all got together and we talked about, I think Amanda was on that call. Jonathan, you were on that call too. Was Michael on that call? But were you on that call, Jonathan?
I'm not sure if I was on that one.
Yeah, it was Keith Aldridge was the facilitator, and we were talking about, you know, blower door testing during COVID, and also Paul Francisco was on the call. So previous to that, I believe the Energy Conservatory had put out a document about using a blower door during COVID-19, and since then, the BPA, I'm going to say BPA, it's not the Bonneville Power Administration, it's the Building Performance Association. They have put out a small paper document about what to do doing a blower door test, and of course Energy Conservatory has theirs, and then I don't think Paul has officially put out his, he sent us that email, Amanda, and but generally, when it comes to blower door testing, I think most of us were in agreement on that BPA phone call. I mean, there was a few people that weren't, but we're in agreement that it's actually better, using a blower door is ventilating the house. And so in a sense, if you stay out of the air streams created by the blower door, that it's safe to do a blower door test. We're doing screening before we go to houses. There's always a chance that there could be someone there with, asymptomatic person with COVID. But if we stay out of the airstreams and we depressurize the house, that we're going to be okay. So general consensus amongst BPA and Energy Conservatory and Paul Francisco's comments would be that once we get to the house, we'd like to purge the house to start with. Probably recommend that the homeowners open the windows for you in the back bedrooms, and then purging the house means let's run the blower door for 2 to 4 minutes and empty the house out and change the volume of the air a couple times in the house with your blower door, staying out of the airstream, in depressurization mode is preferred. And then there's other comments there where maybe we'd want to run our blower door constantly while we're there, ventilating the house. That's probably not going to work in the winter, but it does seem the general consensus is that it's reasonably safe to do, if you've done your work ahead of time, checking on folks, you've done your health checks before, and stay out of the airstream.
Now, Chris, are you speaking specifically to single family homes, or would that include multifamily as well?
Jonathan, thank you for bringing that up. And we're just talking about single family homes. There's a lot higher risk. If you look at the document provided by the Energy Conservatory, they have a risk table on there, and one of the highest risks is higher risk is using a blower door in a multifamily situation, because you're not in that other unit, and you could be pulling air when you're depressurizing. You could pull air from that other unit and you don't know who's in there and you haven't checked, and if you pressurized, you'd be blowing the air from your unit into that unit. So it's not recommended necessary. Most people say we shouldn't be doing blower door tests in a multifamily building at this time. So good point, Jonathan. Thank you. I have a COVID brain lately, so I can't remember too much stuff at one time.
I'm glad you kind of mentioned about the purging the 2 to 4 minutes. Some of the documents I've seen are recommending like 10 minutes, and that seems a bit overkill. What I worry about there is, like say you're in Arizona right now, running a blower door for 10 minutes, you're going to heat the inside of the house up to the outside temperature. And the same thing where I live, in a few months, you don't want to be bringing in the 20 below air for that period of time. So
I would recommend, I also, I was aware of those 3 documents, or actually those 2 documents, plus we got some information from Paul Francisco about his feelings about blower door tests. And, but I also searched, I Googled blower door tests and COVID-19, and there's some good information out there, but not a lot really when you think about it. It's like one page, and it has the Minneapolis blower door paper on there, and a document, and also has the BPA document on there. And then Jonathan, you were part of a bigger thing with BPA. You guys did a more comprehensive during COVID-19 work concept with BPA.
Yeah, so we did a town hall discussion that I believe is up on their website.
Yep,
and
it's on there.
Yeah, and they have some excellent documents that Amanda Hatherley was involved in producing with her group there, the checklists. So there's some good information out there, but yeah, like you said, this is also new that there isn't the 50,000 Google pages to look through yet. So look forward to that. That should be fun.
Yeah. Well, the BPA document has a calculation on it. It says, well, if you have a 10,000 cubic foot building and you run the blower door at 6,000 CFM50 for, or you run the fan all out for 2 minutes, or 2 to 4 minutes, you're going to change the air in there several times. You just have to do that calculation. What's the volume of the house? And then the fan's able to move 6,000 cubic feet per minute. And so how long do you have to run the fan to get maybe 2 air changes or whatever, and it's only it's probably very few minutes. And I think that is, when you think about, there's some discussion about resuspending the virus if it's stuck to surfaces. Well, if you resuspend the virus, it's going to get in that airstream and go out of the building, and therefore you don't want to stand in the airflow. And other parts of the virus are just going to stick to surfaces, and it has nothing. That's done. There's nothing you can do about that except for your PPE and washing things. Keep washing your hands and those type of things. So. Most people think running the blower door is fairly safe. We did have a few people on that original discussion that they just didn't think it was safe, almost to be in the house. But if it's not safe to be in the house, then it's not safe to be in the house at all, and the blower door doesn't even come into the discussion.
Yeah, and also I'd like to say that a lot of the time people are really focused on the blower door, and when they should really be also very aware of the office space that they're going to, and like driving in a truck or a cab with other people. And the risk there is going to be way higher than running a blower door. But I think people get like down this narrow alleyway of, well, can I get it from a blower door, without thinking that there are other areas of their works where I think they're at a higher risk.
Okay, we've got a few questions in the chat here. Chris, is there a document we can provide our clients which shows that blower door and duct testing is safe to perform at this time? I think you kind of talked about that, but is there a document? No, all those documents are just what should I say? Good information, but each agency is going to have their own. We're pushing it down to your agency. What do you, it's going to be what you want to write for your process at your own place. You know what I mean? And use that information to make your decisions of how you're going to go about it. Got a couple of questions on depressurization here. What do you do when there's wood heat?
Well, that's the oldest story in the book. We need to get them to shut the wood stove down before we get there. I'm sure that's a challenge in a lot of aspects because they need heat. I remember years ago when we used to always carry stuff with us so we could just go in there with our tongs and our big bucket, and we'd take their fire out of the fireplace or their fire out of their wood stove and bring it outside and then do our blower door test,
Okay. What's the reasoning behind depressurization instead of pressurization?
Oh, well, there's a thought that if you have virus particles on surfaces, and in theory, if you pressurize the house, the virus particle on a surface could be in the direct airstream of the blower door, and the blower door could resuspend that particle and blow it to a person, an individual or person inside the building that may not have already, been exposed to that particle. So in theory, if you blow directly on the surface, you could resuspend the particles, and they're going to go back in the house. All right. Or they're in the house, but they could be pushed to another person in the house. But if you resuspend them on depressurization, they're in an airstream that goes and is exhausted out of the building. Hopefully that answers the question.
What if people are pressurizing? Do they still purge?
Yeah, I think, if you are pressurizing, you absolutely still purge. I would say, because what you're doing is the purge concept is kind of like clean the house out, because you're in there. You know what I mean? Like, let's get some fresh air into the house and change the air. In theory, there's some particles, and there could be virus particles in the air, suspended in the air, and you want to get that. You want to make it sort of outdoor air in the house. And so either way, pressurize or depressurize, I think you're going to purge when you get to the building. It's making it a safe space for you to be in.
Okay. What about sanitizing the equipment so we don't cross-contaminate?
Well, that all those documents that are out there, refer to, we're always going to clean our equipment. Any equipment we use has to be cleaned before we take it anywhere else, and when we're done with it, according to the CDC rules and guidelines.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments?
I was going to comment about the cleaning. It's like, I haven't thought about that. We haven't done those yet, but I'm thinking, are we going to spray disinfectant? The fan blades on the fan are inside there. So, that question that person raised is a pretty good question. I'm guessing you could spray the disinfectant on there and let it sit on there for a while. But again, disinfectants, you need to clean surfaces before you use the disinfectant. So, it's kind of a subtle nuance of the concept, but I think people are smart enough to figure out how to get it done eventually.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't done it yet. Anyone else done it yet? Cleaned their blower door fan? Vinny, you guys should have done that already at least 100 times. Okay.
Sorry, having trouble unmuting myself. No, have not cleaned the blower door fans.
I mean, in theory, if you're depressurized, if you were cleaning the fan on the outside and then you were depressurizing all the time, you'd just be blowing it outside the house. So I think it's relatively safe if you didn't clean the fan blades. But
well, and here's the problem with most of what we're doing. I mean, we're all working off basically our experience, for one, and the limited information or the overabundance of information that we have. There's so much data. It's best practices all over again, but in a different way. We've always depressurized. We do follow the same guidance that you guys are talking about. We normally run our blower door for at least a couple of minutes before we do any real diagnostics. I mean, everything we're doing is based on assumptions, a lot of assumptions, and a lot of, we don't have solid answers to all these questions that we all have. I mean, all we can do is work smart. There's so much data that has not been put together in a collective manner that we can actually say, yes, this is 100% correct. But we do have the knowledge and the experience to do things in a safe manner to the best that we can. And really, that's what it comes down to. It's up to the agencies and the people that we're dealing with, whether it's staff that feel comfortable in going to homes, whether it's clients that are comfortable in letting us into homes, and doing all that pre-screening. So it's just difficult. It's really difficult. So I think the guidance that's coming out now has been definitely better than when it's first started. But yeah, I mean, cleaning hand tools, so we run a little different way too. We have mostly contractors. So we do all of our auditing, all our diagnostics in and out. And then we use contractors for the majority of the work. just because we have a very high load, and we were deemed essential workers from the get-go because we serve a very vulnerable clientele, and we've had record temperatures here. We can't, people die without air conditioning here. It is a life and death kind of thing that we live in. So we had to make some hard choices right when this started, as an agency and as a weatherization provider. So it hasn't been easy, but fortunately I've had a really good staff that really want to do their work, and we've had really receptive clients. So we've been practicing the PPE and all these things that are coming into fruition now for quite a while. And we have been very fortunate. That's all I can tell you, you know. But we try to adapt to the newest information every day, but there's just so much information and so many, well, you should do this, you should do that. And I hate making decisions on shoulds. I'd like to see something solid, something that backs that up. So I try to follow the best advice I can get. But as far as cleaning the fan blades, I don't know, Chris, that's a good idea. Maybe a power washer. I don't know.
Yeah, but then on the other hand, you know, the blades are concealed behind the metal grate. So if you're not able to actually touch them, maybe it's not that big of a deal. I don't know, but you know, these are the things we have to figure out for the first time.
If you're not blower door testing, if you're going to one house a day and you have like 24 hours in between tests, then you're already giving yourself a window of time when the virus can go away. I mean, that's the way I used to treat, when this all first started happening, we were spraying down our Amazon packages and everything, and now we don't really do that. But the thing is, and the other thing is, I only use alcohol spray, and it's the cheapest product on the market, and there's no smell. You can spray anything with alcohol in a sprayer, and it's pretty quick. But that's me. I'm not science. I'm just trying to make the best of a bad situation.
Yeah.
Oh, careful now, Mimi. Happy hour doesn't start for another couple hours, so.
Yeah, and I'll also say the amount of virus on the blower door blades after you've been running a blower door is going to be so much less than walking into an office with someone who could have the, you know, COVID-19, or going in a truck with somebody. Those are much, much, much higher risk than whether you've got virus on blades. So those are where you, I think, need to focus most.
There's another question about wouldn't pressurizing be better for purging, but I think that's pretty much been answered. There is a comment that came in that depressurization could contaminate the house with asbestos if there's a vermiculite in the attic. That's probably a whole nother discussion. I don't know if.
Well, we don't run. I mean, if we had a vermiculite, we wouldn't run a blower door at all. Is that correct? I mean, whether it was pressurization or depressurization. I mean, we used to pressurize, but then they said don't do. You know, everyone was against that.
Yeah, I was going to make a comment too earlier. I think that part of the scenario has to be when, you know, you can't forego your normal procedure about looking into an attic space or a crawl space before running a blower door if purging is part of the process. I mean, the distinction would be we want to purge the house before we do diagnostics. That doesn't mean you forego the rest of that normal procedure. So I guess just a clarifying point from my perspective would be, you know, when do you purge the house? That's the question. Not without making sure that it's safe to run a blower door, right? Correct.
And how do you do that? You have to do an inspection to, you know, you need to inspect the attic and probably, I don't think not as much as the crawl space. If you're worried about vermiculite, you know, or asbestos, you need to probably do a quick inspection to find out if there's any there. Good.
Well,
point,
one thing is if you're opening all the windows, you're not really depressurizing the house. You're just like a big fan at that point, right? I mean, it's not the same as when you have all the windows closed, everything shut down, and then you put the fan on and you suck the tile off the ceiling, you know? So your risk is not nearly as high of dragging vermiculite into the house, but I agree, you would want to look at it first at least.
Yeah.
And some people actually have a hole to the attic space, you know, a hole where you can actually see up there. And so, yeah, and that would still bring some into the space.
I guess when I think about the purging part of it, you know, there's been a lot of talk about how ventilation is really important in the situation now. You know, when you talk about commercial buildings, ventilation airflow usually goes up. When we're purging with a blower door, we're dealing with more of a horizontal airstream. So there could be a slight risk, but I think one of the things that we haven't mentioned yet is, if possible, you know, get everybody out of the house while the blower door is running, and you know, do that purge with nobody in the house, and then go back in. So if that's an option, I would sure do that.
You know, all I can think about is I'm really glad it's summertime, because this is going to be a nightmare in the winter. When it's 20 below, we're going to have a hard time getting people out of the house and depressurizing and purging and all that other stuff.
Not in North Dakota. They have heated crew trailers that they can just train to a fifth wheel vacation lodge and put the people in there.
Yeah, so we have that problem right now, and what we're trying to do, part of the screening process when we schedule jobs is we do ask them if they can, if we could have minimal people in the home. You know, fortunately, we don't have a lot of large families in our homes, but we do ask if it's possible they cannot be there while we do our test, just as an extra precaution. And if so, can they at least stay in one area away from any airstream? I mean, there's a lot of screening that goes on with this also. But that's a good point. You don't just go in the house and set up a blower door, and we never do that anyway. We do our visual inspection first, and then usually diagnostics are the end of our audit. But yeah, it was a good point. You just don't set up a blower door and start, you know, exhausting with the Minneapolis exhaust fan, we call it. So, yeah, if we can get the clients out of the home, or at least kind of isolated from us while we're working, that's what we try to do.
Okay, anybody else? Any other comments? Not seeing any more in the chat right now. Well, if not, we'll move on to our next subject, which is filtration and ventilation during COVID-19. And Jonathan, you want to get us started on that?
Sure. So we were having the discussion about filtration and ventilation, and if you've been checking out the sessions here at Energy OutWest, you've seen some of our experts, and essentially ventilation is good. The more fresh air that comes into a house is good in terms of COVID safety. Now, there was also some discussion about HEPA filters, and I had heard that one state, their governor's orders, in order for weatherization folks to get back working, required HEPA filters to be installed in all furnaces. So sure, a HEPA filter would filter out the coronavirus. However, we still do need to think about, the systems that are in place here. And if you restrict the airflow that much in a furnace without doing the actual calculations to see whether that ductwork or that furnace can handle it, you're just going to introduce another problem down the road that could be potentially more dangerous. So as far as that goes, I personally, I don't think that attaching HEPA rated filters to furnaces is a good idea, just to do willy-nilly. I mean, you need to really calculate whether that is appropriate or not. Now, and when I heard that, I guess I didn't quite understand the intent. If it is within a home and there's a family that lives there, that family more than likely would be, kind of the way that I think that defined as a bubble. So those people aren't social distancing from one another. So what then would be the point? They have lots of exposure to one another. However, if you were in a situation when one family member were to get sick and the rest of the family is trying to keep their distance from that person, that would be an excellent situation where one of those sort of like a portable HEPA filter could work to clear the air where that person is as a means to keeping it away from the rest of the family. But I guess in terms of how this would work with weatherization, I guess I don't really see that there is much of an effective outlet to introduce HEPA filters. You know, if you were to have sort of, I'm going to call it a personal HEPA filter, you know, that would be a health and safety measure that would need to be written into a state plan that would need DOE approval. So you'd have to get an amendment. And I don't think that there's quite enough data to support that. Certainly worth a try, but there is going to be that legwork to do it. So don't go buying them willy-nilly without finding out first. So those are my initial thoughts, but I would like to hear what the rest of the panel has to say on filtration and ventilation.
So I'll make a comment regarding air conditioning equipment. So the size of return you would have to increase for that mechanical equipment, I don't know if that could even be done if you put a HEPA filter in some of these units. We're talking a huge restriction of airflow. And in Arizona, I think you guys are familiar with our stock. I mean, unlike the East Coast of the older homes, we have a centrally located return normally. We don't normally have one in every room that's filtered. And they're already notoriously undersized when they size these systems. So we end up, part of our program, we go in and usually double the amount of return air on these systems, just so the static pressure gets down to what the data plate says, which is usually 0.5 inches of water column, but it's like, it creates a huge burden. So it's one of those knee-jerk reactions from a politician that doesn't understand the mechanics behind that and the challenge. I'm not saying we can't overcome that challenge, but where does now your cost effectiveness, that's going to affect your modeling. It's going to affect everything because the additional cost, now you have to redo the way you're doing things with your mechanical installations. So from here, it'd be kind of a nightmare, but I'm willing to do it, but is it really, and like you said, there's no scientific data that really substantiates that is going to work, right? So.
Yeah, and it would require, the actual calculation and testing to make sure that your heat rise isn't out of control and so forth. So there's a lot to go into it. Yeah, it did sound like a knee-jerk reaction to me. But yeah, like anything else, and it'd be the same thing if you have a whole house fan and you crank that thing up to 11. Well, dilution air is good in terms of COVID, but are we backdrafting the water heater now? I mean, everything just needs to be taken into account with how it's going to affect other things. We can't just go willy-nilly.
One thing that we can do is use this as an opportunity to enhance our client education skills when it comes to ventilation, and really nail that point home, how important it is to keep that fan running at the minimum rate, or however it is that you've set your calculations, so that the client understands the importance of it. It's not just the things that we used to talk about, radon, mold, moisture, et cetera. Now we have something that could potentially be a real problem for the clients if they happen to disable that fan that you've put in there for any reason. So it's a good opportunity to work on those client education skills, if anything.
And maybe another thing to bring up too, in terms of when we were talking about purging the home with the blower door, essentially we're getting back to, in terms of COVID-19, more outside air is best, just sort of general. Now, where I live in Montana, we are already in wildfire season. So we also have to be concerned about, contaminants that we're going to pull in as a means to reduce potential coronavirus, so you don't want to smoke their house out. Well, you want to just be careful.
Here's my feeling about things. We have spent how many years developing these protocols to provide adequate ventilation for all kinds of different reasons. And I don't see COVID-19 as being any different than all the rest of the stuff. And I don't think we should be trying to single-handedly here and there trying to figure out if we should be adding more air or not. I think if we actually, I don't know exactly what the percentage of clients are that we have where we can actually successfully leave a house that they don't change out in the adequate ventilation mode. And so we worked really hard on client education to try to keep that low flow going, just like Paul Raymer said in his session. The low flow, constant low flow is what will help anything that's out there. Because if COVID-19 goes away, who's to say there's not another thing coming right behind it? So I don't think we should be questioning our technology so much as we just need to be doing it right and focusing, like Troy just said, on the education to the client, because it's all important. I mean, once they turn off that fan, it doesn't matter if it's COVID, water, mold, whatever it is, it's going to get worse. So I just sort of don't pay a lot of attention to, like, should we be adding more air? Should we be doing this? I mean, I think we should follow our protocols. And if we think we should add more air when we go to do a final inspection, we do that anyway. And like, anyway, that's just my thought about it.
I would agree, Mimi. We see a lot of houses when we run the calculation that may not actually, where we wouldn't have to install a fan, but because of situations in the house, we're going to do it anyway. So I don't think we need to change what we're doing. Has anybody altered how they're treating ventilation now during this period?
No.
Yeah, not in Oregon either. We've worked together as a team at the state office to kind of put out some preliminary guidelines. And we're in kind of the draft stage for protocols for getting back to work with COVID in mind. But we've talked as a team at the state office here, and like one of the things that should be on the checklist is common sense. And I think Mimi's point is a good one. I think we need to make sure that we keep at it. We've got years and years of experience with building science and knowing what's required in terms of ventilation. I think if we're doing our jobs, and we've got our heads screwed on straight, we understand that there's some risk to be involved here, and we can work through that in our protocols. And I've been encouraged to see some of agencies come back with protocols in place that says, here's how we plan to go back to work. And they've gone above and beyond those minimum requirements because they understand that they want to mitigate the risk and they want to protect their workers and their clients in order to get the job done. I just really appreciate seeing that.
Yeah, I think it's important to note as well that, yeah, like we're talking about, when new protocols come up, it can be sort of the thing that you think about. So if you're using the blower door to purge the house, that's the new thing that's on your mind. But yeah, you certainly don't want to do that before you ensure that the wood stove doesn't have a fire in it and there's asbestos in the vermiculite in the attic. We still, need to do the job that we were doing before, keeping everyone safe, and adopt these new things. But remember what we've learned over the past, number of decades.
Right. I just want to make a comment here. Cal's not purposely being quiet up there. He's having some mic issues, so that's why we're not hearing from him. But yeah, good point, guys. I don't think we should be changing what we're doing now. So anything, I haven't got any questions on this topic in the chat. So anything else from anybody?
Well, Bruce, I have one more comment.
Okay.
We talked about ventilation, increasing filtration rather at the HVAC system. Jonathan brought up that point from, a state governor making that a mandate to get back to work. I've always been of the mind that the filters in our HVAC systems, whether that be for AC or heating or whatever in a central system, it's never really designed to clean the air so much as protect the equipment. And so having like a MERV 13 kind of rating on your filter would be a kind of a good balance between getting as much filtration you can out of that system without affecting the performance of that and affecting total external static pressure and some of those things. So I think having a good balance in there makes sense. If you need additional filtration for whatever reason, and as an energy auditor going into that space, my recommendation has always been, add an additional filtration system, maybe a freestanding unit in the corner of a room somewhere, so that you don't affect the entire system. Remember, the house is the system, not just the mechanical equipment. So I guess that would be my recommendation if one had to increase or take additional steps for filtration, that you look at something aside from the central system to add that.
That's a really good point. That reminds me of, sort of the simple and old school way to add a whole house dehumidification system is to just stick a dehumidifier next to the return. You could do that with an off-the-shelf air purifier kind of a deal.
This is Dan, and I see on the ventilation, as always, mostly with weatherization, we know we're doing exhaust only. So we still have that issue of where our supply air is coming from. In the perfect world, we'd have balanced ventilation. We know, and Paul was great referencing this, and Ken too, that the fact that outside air is probably the best thing we can do for ourselves, for our health, and we know we're up against the controversy or meeting up with air tightness and ventilating, build tight, ventilate right, but we still have those challenges. So I think this has brought more light to that, and we'll move on. But there's the whole aspect of ventilation is still on an affordability standpoint, and we all know what balanced ventilation means. It means more cost. So there's certain aspects, it's funny where it comes from different angles. So that's my comment.
Okay, well, let's move on to the next subject. A lot of the crews are back out working in the field again now. One thing we haven't talked much about is inspections. Vinny, you want to start us out on how you're handling inspections?
Yeah, so am I muted? I'm up. Okay, cool. So for our agency here, we have 3 QCI certified individuals. So we're doing our own inspections on our contractors' work. Typically on the final is when we do our QCI inspection, trying to avoid third trips out to the home. We're trying to get it all done on our finals. For agencies outside of us, I do QCI inspections around the state. And it just depends on the clients if they're willing to, same screening process. Are you okay with us coming up and doing that? So we follow pretty much the same process with those as we do for our clients that we're doing weatherization for. So again, it's just added precautions. It's like Michael said, common sense. Be smart, work smart. Try to isolate people if you can. Heavy screening. But we haven't, I think on the QCI inspections on the outside of our agency, those have slowed down a lot because not all agencies in Arizona continue to work a lot as we did. So those did slow down. But as far as our work, we didn't miss too many steps. We implemented, based on the information we had, we implemented what we could right away so we could continue. We had about 2 weeks where we didn't do much of anything. But by then we had enough information to at least get back in the field and start working. And it really hasn't slowed down for us. It's actually a little chaotic now. There's so much work and there's so many people in need, and it's crazy. But hey, we're moving forward. Just trying to be smart about it, smart as we can based on what we know.
Anybody else? Maybe the state staff, how are you handling inspections, monitoring, stuff like that?
Bruce, I have not gone out to perform any QCI inspections since this started. And a big reason for that is very much unlike what is happening in Arizona. We ceased work for a number of months and have only recently resumed. That doesn't mean that the QCIs won't happen, and we're talking the minimum 5 to 10%. It does mean that when they do happen, we'll be very careful. And we'll still look for the same things, just like everybody has been saying that we've been doing. There might be some added client education and discussions. However, we're not going to be changing a whole lot of what we're doing. Now, of course, the minimum QCI for every unit, that is happening at the agency level, and nothing has changed there. That's the update from us.
Yeah, let me reiterate too, Bruce, that so it's the state is not currently monitoring. So all the QCIs are agency level, not state.
Mhm.
So what, Cal, what'd you say? I didn't hear you. Oh yeah, you're muted. It's okay. Love you, man.
We actually did go out and do some monitoring earlier, but the state has stopped us again now. We didn't really change a lot, except I did a lot more desk monitoring with pictures and what I could get done just to minimize time in the house, you know. So that's really the only change. And I actually think going forward, I'm going to do more of that. It seemed to work really well. We always did, you know, some desk monitoring, but now if I can know exactly what I'm looking at when I get to the house and have seen it already, it's less time I have to spend there. So I do have a question from the chat here. What level of PPE are you requiring your crews to wear? Do they wear Tyvek or similar suits when in clients' homes? We're just about to head back to work and we're getting some conflicting advice.
So I can pop in for that one. I mean, I think, you know, it's going to be different. We all on this panel could tell you what is happening where we are, but what I think what's most important is that you reach out to your public health officials, your county public health, or your municipal public health, you know, and in addition to that, your state OSHA people, you know, they're the ones that are going to be in charge of that. You know, what my agency is doing is, you know, we have our protocol of disinfecting and all that kind of stuff. We definitely do wear masks. We don't wear, we have, and we're prepared to wear, but we don't do 100% with a bunny suit on. To be honest, you know, you're going to have to do what your public health officials say. And then, you know, but beyond that, it really depends on what the client is comfortable with and with screening the clients. And if you're talking to someone and they say, yeah, sure, come on down, but wear a bunny suit, well, then that answers your question right there. So you got to find who's making the rules, and then from there, you know, coordinate with the client to see what's going to make them feel comfortable.
Yeah, we reached out to our state OSHA office, and we don't require the suits. It's up to the crews if they want to, but it's not a requirement here. We require the masks and social distancing as much as possible, trying to keep the clients away from the clients, and that's the main protocol.
And I think it's also important to think about, you know, just to zoom back out and see what, you know, the WHO and the CDC say. And they say that, you know, mostly it's taken in through the lungs. So wear a mask. And then from there, you know, it gets into your bloodstream through contact with your mouth or your eyes. So wash your hands. You know, I mean, I think that's sort of, you know, the top 10 things to do to keep safe. And following that, well, then, yeah, then you can think about some of these measures that will, you know, provide protection after that. But at this point, it's really covering your mouth and keeping your hands clean.
What masks are you requiring, Jonathan?
So we don't have, for my staff, we are just doing cloth masks. Now, we do have a handful of N95s, but in general, we're just doing sort of either surgical masks or a cloth mask. Now, for our contractors that are all subcontracted, they do wear N95s. But for my staff, which would just be more, an inspection type visit, we're doing cloth masks.
Yes.
Cal sent a comment in, and he said, one of the best things we can do is just stay healthy and take care of yourself first. Don't get worn down so you can fight it if you get it.
Yeah. I think bullet bourbon, I think COVID does not like bullet bourbon. I'm pretty sure. But to agree with the guys, yeah, we're using just the paper masks. On Monday, Troy and Amanda, you guys were, and Jonathan, you were moderator for a session. The gentleman from Montana, was it? Can't remember his name.
Yeah, Aaron, I believe.
Aaron. You got me thinking. He was talking about a wash station with bands. I see a market for a new COVID weatherization ban, where you have a little sealed off area that you go in and disrobe, and then you got a wash station. It could be a market for this now.
Ooh, for a 50% stake in that future company, I'll add Bruce's cottage idea for the occupants to have a lovely little space to hang out while you're working.
Tour around a mini house and they can camp out in there or something.
Yeah, to Cal's point though, I think it's important, and what I've stressed to our crews is make sure when you're out there, if you're in a situation that's making you uncomfortable, get out of there. I mean, we don't want anything to happen.
Yep, that's true. Stress is about as toxic as anything else. So you're going to need to take care of yourself if you are going to fight anything off. Hopefully not.
Yeah.
Another piece too of the conversation here is really communication. This is a fast-paced and ever-changing world that we live in, and I think for us at the state level, just staying in communication with all 17 of our agencies that are delivering the program is pretty key. What are the struggles? How are we doing on supply lines of N95s or whatever PPE we're working with? And some of those particular components, and just allowing our agencies to kind of share best practices, share the struggle a little bit, and come up with solutions has really been, I feel, pretty rewarding and kind of a positive strategy to kind of get through it too. So there's been some good stuff that have kind of come out of those conversations. Steve Diven's done a great job of kind of organizing those meetings and getting everyone together on Zoom calls and that sort of thing. Just to kind of keep the communications open. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things or strategies that we could kind of employ to kind of get through this.
Here's a question. How about essential hazard pay for WAP techs?
Don't we wish?
Yeah, we wish.
Yeah, and I have a comment about the whole mask thing, because I know there's some stuff going on in the chat too, is that if you're, a lot of people put on a mask and then they totally forget social distancing. The social distancing is really important. And just because you've got a cloth mask on doesn't mean you should all be hanging around sort of right next to each other, palling around, chatting. And then the difference also between the cloth mask and the N95 is if you're socially distanced from people and you're not coming in contact with, for 10, more than 10 minutes with somebody, a cloth mask's okay. But if you're in a room with someone, the same person for 20 minutes, and you don't know whether they have COVID-19 or not, and you can't tell with someone that can look totally healthy, that's when an N95 is more appropriate.
Yeah, so our struggle was always getting enough masks and disinfectants and everything for our crew. It was really, really tough the first few months. Seems to have gotten better now. Fortunately, with our other programs that we run with home health care and all that, we were able to buy large amounts through our corporate office and share that with all our departments. So. But yeah, that was a real struggle. We couldn't get an N95 mask if you offered $100 for one. But yeah, it's I agree with you, Amanda. And that's the problem with this is you just never know. You just you could go to a client's house today and they're fine, and you don't know if they're symptomatic. You don't know. They got tested yesterday and they were negative, but tomorrow they could be positive. There's so many unknowns with this. all we can do is be as safe as possible.
Yeah, there's just so much misinformation out there. I'll tell you an experience I had while I was out monitoring. We got to the house and the lady came out and met us out in the front yard with a mask on, and we all stood apart and talked about what we were going to do and went through all that. We went in the house and she took her mask off and came over to me and started talking. I mean, so there's just people don't really understand or get, the changes that we have to make in our lifestyle right now, so.
One of my favorites is being in the grocery store and then seeing someone like pull their mask away and then sneeze all over the place and then put their mask back on. So there's a lot of education that needs to happen out there, no doubt.
Or like the person checking each green pepper in the bin, to see, yeah. No, anyway, anything else on this? Chris has got his mask on. Yeah. Okay.
Is this the right way to wear it, like this?
Yeah. The next subject, Troy, you want to talk a little bit about the cleaning and sanitizing protocols?
Sure, and I think that the idea here is very much in line with what we have been speaking about already, and that is to, Michael had mentioned, to use common sense. I think that's very important when it comes to this, because people can get very easily swayed into being a bit crazy with this whole thing, and this is not the time to be getting carried away with how much cleaners we use. And I've already experienced this myself. Walk into a gas station or a grocery store or whatever, and I'm just hit with this strong odor of whatever it is that they're using. And I'm thinking, wow, what in the world happened here that they needed to use so much concentration to kill? It couldn't have been something that they couldn't have removed with the proper concentration. So the common sense point really is to start reading labels of whatever cleaner it is that you're using. Of course, you need to make sure that it's on the EPA list. But how many of us have forgotten how to read labels? It's a good practice to get back into. You might even learn something you didn't know before, maybe even pronounce some of the actives that you weren't able to pronounce before if you practice. So I would definitely recommend that first, is to start reading labels. And secondly, this is just general cleaning information, whether it be for your office or the client's house or your own house, whatever you're doing. I would strongly recommend that you save the creativity for your kitchen and for cooking. Don't get creative. I'm using a negative. This is going against our session yesterday from Larry. If you're getting creative, you're going to cause a problem when you're mixing chemicals. That is just that's just how it is. If bleach works great and ammonia works great, don't think that the two of them are going to work better together, because they probably won't, and you're going to be causing more problems than you're out to start. Another thing is, Amanda had talked about social distancing. That is really our first defense against this. Don't abandon what's general, the general ideas of what we know about this virus. We know that it's a respiratory problem, and that surface contamination is not the primary route of exposure. So it would be pretty crazy to be standing there shoulder to shoulder with somebody cleaning furiously on this desk that you just know somebody sneezed on, and neither one of you are wearing masks, and you're just bound to get that desk clean. So it does go back to common sense. You only want to use the amount that's indicated. Don't use more. More is not necessarily better. Think about this. If you do something to cause an irritation of your respiratory system or your client's respiratory system, think about what happens after you leave that home. Weatherization crew is in, they've installed windows, insulation, a new HVAC system, the whole works. And the first thing they did when they arrived was to wipe down all the surfaces, which we should. However, the strength of the cleaner that was used was so strong that now I can't really breathe. I don't know if I have COVID from these folks that came in, or what's going on, but I can't smell anything. I can't breathe. My lungs hurt. My skin is itching. We want to try and avoid situations like that where we're actually making something worse in an attempt to make it better. And that sort of is in a nutshell some of the thinking that really needs to be revolving around cleaning. You want to keep it simple. There's some training that we all have been talking about where we're talking about cleaning first with soap and water and then disinfecting. Again, that's common sense. You want to get the grime off first so the disinfectant can do its work. Your high touch areas, we had talked a little bit about this with the blower door testing, and this perhaps could be circled back around. If we're going to be purging homes with the blower door depressurizing, would it make sense to go in there very quickly first and clean those high touch areas so that those surfaces don't cause some of the particulates to be airborne? And we're talking about light switches, doorknobs, phones, handles, anything that we know is touched a lot by the clients. And so again, this is not anything that we need to be OCD about. It's nothing that we didn't really know before. This is it's a lot of stuff that we probably should be practicing already. If we're talking about office cleaning, if somebody in your office has been in contact, or if they're COVID positive and you want to go through the procedures that CDC outlines for you or your local health department, one of the biggest things that you can do is you don't want to clean the office right away. Wait 24 hours, shut it down, follow the guidelines, get out of there, wait a day for all the respiratory particles to leave, and then get in there and clean. And again, follow the directions on the labels. Don't get crazy about it. Protect yourself when you're cleaning. Make sure that you're protecting your eyes and your lungs, especially. Make sure that you have enough ventilation. You might want to look at your HVAC system of the office itself. The vehicles, that same vehicle that the person was driving that is COVID positive, wait 24 hours, then clean the vehicle. Steering wheels, the gear shift, if you have one, radio knobs, door handles, all that stuff. Your tools, if you want to be cleaning your tools, we had some discussion about the blower door blades, any of the tools that you're handling. You probably want to be handling just one tool per person. And this could actually solve another problem of who had my drill, where did my back rack go? These are the kinds of things that we hear on the job site. Who was the last person? Where did my tool bag go? Really, we should be having our own set of tools, and to share with people is great, but this is probably not the best time to be doing so. And if you are sharing tools, that's where the disinfection of the tools comes in. Do you want your clients seeing you and exchange these tools and then go right back into your vehicle for the next house? A lot of this is not so much about whether or not you're actually disinfecting the equipment as much as it is the perception that you have a sloppy work practice versus a very good work practice in the spirit of protecting the clients and your coworkers. We don't want to be leaving the idea in the client's mind that we went into the house with a certain set of procedures that is just subject to question. Because if they were to end up being positive with something, we certainly don't want to be in a position where our crews are being blamed for that. Those are some high points that I wanted to touch on. One thing that we will need to be discussing as a group would be these same procedures when it gets cold. I think Mimi had mentioned, or somebody mentioned earlier, when it starts getting cold, it's going to be a different story, and that's true. Are we still following the same procedures with cleaning? Are we cleaning our tools outside? Are we cleaning them inside in front of the client? And now the client's going to have respiratory issues. So there's a few things that we need to sort through the next few months before we really have this down solid. Those are my 2 cents with cleaning. Or more than 2 cents, I should say.
Anybody else? I do have one question that came in the chat, and it probably covers just about all the subjects we've talked about. Does anyone ask clients to wear masks? I know that's a hard ask, but we are finding out how important masks can be for safety.
Yeah, we do. In New Mexico, the clients are asked if you were given a mask, would you wear one? And that happens during the intake, and that can help screen out some of the people that might be more difficult or defiant. And then we do ask that they wear masks. The visitors are on the site, they're asked to wear masks and sign in as well. So it's something that has been enforced fairly easily from what we understand at this point. That doesn't mean that we're not going to run into problems with that, but up until now, it's been fairly smooth with that.
Of all the protocols that we saw from our agencies come in for, COVID related stuff, almost everyone says that they're requiring clients to either wear a mask or to step outside while we do the final inspections and auditing and all of that. So it seems to be a fairly consistent across the board from what we're seeing. We do part of the protocol that we put out as a state. We require that if a client doesn't have a mask, that they're offered one. So the agency has to offer one if the client doesn't have one. Aside from that, everyone has pretty much picked up and ran with it. So.
Yeah, we've incorporated that into our screening process as well. We let them know that they need to socially distance or vacate the premises, wear a mask, that kind of thing. Because, in the screening process, that's going to help them understand whether or not they actually are comfortable with it. If they thought they were, but they won't wear a mask, well, it turns out that maybe they're not. And then in that case, it's good to find out, when they would be comfortable to have us come back. So I think it's good to do that ahead of time so that there's no surprises.
Yeah, our crews also offer, and auditors and inspectors offer masks if they don't have them. Again, one of the situations I ran across, we walked up to one house with our masks on, and the lady came out and immediately just got belligerent and said, "Nobody's coming in this house with a mask on." I said, "Okay, well, thanks for your time. We'll be on our way." And another question about the protocols: how many workers are traveling in the same vehicle?
So for my agency, for my staff, including myself, we do not travel in vehicles together. My contractors, they are riding in vehicles together. However, they are, using masks and trying to introduce as much ventilation. But again, that's going to be something that's going to change in the winter months as well.
Yeah, same here as Jonathan. We have two-man crews that audit the homes, and they do ride together. They do wear masks. I ask them every day, "Are you guys comfortable? Do you want to separate?" And they don't. So that's how it is.
Yeah, our agencies don't have enough vehicles to separate everybody, so they do ride together, and like Vinny said, they're fine with it. They wear the masks and ventilate, but again, like Troy mentioned, winter's coming, and having the windows open in the truck is going to be a little difficult, but we're going to have to see how we address that. Cal has a comment here. If a client has a pre-existing condition, maybe we should wait until this cools down before we work on them if possible.
I would agree. If during the screening process, if we find out they do have pre-existing conditions, then we might defer that for a while. For us, it'd be the winter time. So usually in the summertime, no one wants to refuse any service. They really want us there. But once our wonderful weather mellows out, it's pretty nice.
Anybody else want to comment?
That is one of the intake questions that we use for our clients as well, is the pre-existing conditions. That doesn't necessarily mean that they won't receive weatherization, but they will be deferred until things are under control. And so that's part of the deferral plan.
Yeah, that's nothing new here either. We've always asked that just in case something we're going to be doing might affect some condition they have. So, that's always been the protocol.
Yeah, I would just echo that. Screening and that communication with the clients it's always important, but it's doubly, triply so now. It's just I say this all the time. I'll say it again. It's important to remember that these people's homes are sacred to them. They raise their children, they care for elders, the whole nine. And we have always needed to respect that fact, but even more so now when it's a stranger coming in and there's that much more danger. We really have to be cognizant of that. And if they're not uncomfortable, just move them down the list, try and find out when they will be comfortable. I had a client that didn't want to have an inspection for that reason. And it was because they had an allergy shot that compromised their immune system, so she was like, well, in 3 months, then I'm good to go. But, it's just important to touch base with the clients to make sure that they're comfortable with you being there.
Got another question. What if there are 8 or more persons in the home? Do you have a max limit of how many people can be home while they're working?
That gets a little sticky, I guess. We have not run into that here, but I have been in homes where there's between the 20 dogs and cats, there's about 5 or 6 people. So it gets challenging. I'm not sure what I could do about that. Maybe pick another day where maybe kids are at school, but that's not happening. So yes, it's kind of I don't know how to correctly answer that. Is it a big house where they can spread out? Is it a little tiny house where we're all, there's a lot more safety issues that pop up when you get that many people in a smaller space too. So, man, that's a hard one. I'd probably try to schedule where there isn't going to be 8 people in a house. That's what I would do.
You might just need to add a slip and slide or something to your toolkit so that all the kids can go outside and play. I wonder if that's an allowable cost. I'll have to check.
Put that in your health and safety plan.
Yeah, so when you calculate your ASHRAE calculation on that one, you're going to have a pretty big fan, I think.
Yeah. Well, I'm not seeing any more in the chat. Does anybody else have anything else to add or anything you want to?
You can just leave the blower door at that house with 8 people and you don't have to clean it.
Yeah.
I just want to say I hope we can get more optimism in the environment right now. It's so politically charged and there's just so much terrible information out there and negative. It's sad to see. And I try to stay away from it. I'm glad I don't live in a city because it seems to be really condensed here. But just be optimistic, everybody. I really believe that if you put enough positivity out there, that it spreads and it consumes the other stuff. We're going to get through this. We are human. We're strong, and we'll get through it. Just keep being optimistic and be safe. And we're on a mission, and it ain't over. So let's continue. Just be safe and keep a good attitude. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, now lots of people are frightened and scared and worried, and that goes for the clients and everyone who's going into homes. But there's definitely been a lot of people who've been working in hospitals in full PPE and have not gotten COVID-19. And I think that if you are really careful with your PPE, then you should be safe and your clients should be safe, and that's where you should put your a lot of focus, I think.
I agree. I just think I'd really like to see see everybody taking personal responsibility to try to bring this under control as fast as possible, because I am tired of not going on trips. So I'm ready to travel somewhere. And also, we have a big circle of friends that work at Alaska Airlines and are flying all the time. Not one of them has gotten it because they use the basic mask is the main thing that they use, and they clean the planes a lot. And so when people talk about travel being dangerous, it's only dangerous if you let it be dangerous. And, you know, if you use common sense, you can get through it. So, yeah, I agree with Vinny. Time for an in-person conference. So let's get it done.
Cal has one more comment here about that last subject. He said, I think we should ask the client to have as few persons there as possible during the inspection or work, if possible. And I think we do that in a lot of cases, but sometimes it's just not always possible. So.
Yeah, it can be difficult too, because people are also dealing with social isolation. So, I mean, I've been into hundreds of houses and learned every single detail about people's lives, and they don't often hold back. And I think that that's the same thing we're dealing with now. Some of these folks are so starved for attention that when you come to do a blower door test, it's like Christmas for them, and they can forget that you need some space and to wear masks and things like that. So it just adds to keeping that common sense up. Just trying to stay safe and keep that distance as much as possible.
Okay, well, I think this brings us to the end of the session. I'd like to thank the panel for the great discussion. Remember to ensure your BPI credits for the session. Please follow the link in the chat and complete the survey. Don't forget to watch the sessions in our pre-recorded video library and the live sessions in case you missed any. Information on logging on and obtaining the BPI credits was sent to the email with that you registered. So thank you all for watching, and have a great rest of your day.
So Bruce, I want to thank WSU for doing such a great job on these live sessions. And this has turned out to be amazing. And thanks a lot, Brianne and Mark. And I can't remember the name of the first guy that helped us, but it's worked really seamlessly. Lots of good feedback.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Oops, sorry. Oh.
Hi, everybody.